8 presidents, the first airplane, the Underground Railroad. This is Ohio, and it shaped everything. 2,000 years ago, mysterious builders created giant earthworks. Empires fought wars over this land. It became America's first true frontier. Thousands escaped slavery through Ohio's secret networks. Ohio's generals crushed the Confederacy. Two brothers from Dayton invented human flight. Factories made Ohio the engine of America. Then the factories closed. Towns emptied. But Ohio keeps fighting. It always has. This is the entire history of Ohio. Let's go. 3,000 years ago, Ohio looked like this. Endless forest, rivers teeming with life, and people had already been living here for 10,000 years. But around 1000 BC, something changed. They started building, not houses, not walls, giant mounds of earth. Some for burial, some nobody knows why. We call them the Adena. They carved pipes, made jewelry, and honored their dead. Then came the Hopewell, and they thought bigger, much bigger. Newark earthworks, massive geometric shapes carved into the land. Circles, squares, perfect lines. The Hopewell traded with people from the Rockies to the Gulf of Mexico. They were connected to everyone. And then there's this, the Great Serpent Mound, a quarter-mile of coiled snake, still visible from the air today. Why a snake? What did it mean? We don't know. They left no written words. Around 500 AD, the Hopewell culture faded. The great buildings stopped. New nations moved in. Shawnee, Delaware, Wyandotte, Miami. They built their own Ohio. They knew the mounds were there, sacred places from the old ones, and they respected them. For centuries, this was their world. But change was coming, from across the ocean. The French came first, not with armies, with canoes and beaver pelts. They didn't want to conquer, they wanted to trade. Fur for metal, metal for fur. Everyone profits. The French learned the languages, made alliances, became part of the network. Then the British arrived. They had a different idea. They wanted land. Lots of it. Two European powers now claimed Ohio. And the people who actually lived there? Caught in the middle. 1754. War broke out between France and Britain. They called it the French and Indian War. Most tribes allied with France. The French had been better partners, better friends. But Britain had more resources, more soldiers, more ships. By 1763, they had won. Britain made a promise to the tribes, the Proclamation of 1763. No colonists beyond the Appalachian Mountains. The colonists ignored it completely. They crossed the line anyway. The promise meant nothing. Pontiac, an Ottawa leader, organized resistance. If Britain wouldn't enforce its own laws, the tribes would defend their land themselves. Pontiac's resistance spread across the frontier. British forts were abandoned, settlements emptied, but the resistance couldn't last. Supplies ran low. Pontiac negotiated peace. The British remained. Then everything changed. 1776. The colonists declared independence from Britain. Now the tribes faced another choice. Britain or America? Most chose Britain. The Americans seemed even more hungry for land. 7 years later, it was over. Britain lost. America won. And Ohio was now American territory. The treaty didn't mention the tribes at all. Britain gave away land that wasn't theirs to give. America was a new nation with big dreams. And Ohio? Ohio was where those dreams would be tested. America had a problem. They had just won a revolution. But how do you turn wilderness into states? 1787. Congress created something new, the Northwest Ordinance, a rule book for building new states. The rules were clear. 60,000 people, write a constitution, apply for statehood. And one more thing, no slavery, ever. This would shape America forever, a template for every new state that followed. And Ohio would be the first test. Could the system actually work? Settlers began arriving, families from New England, veterans who had been promised land for their service. Marietta, 1788, the first permanent American settlement in Ohio. The experiment had begun. Cincinnati followed, then Cleveland. Towns sprouted across the territory. But the tribes who lived there hadn't agreed to any of this. The Northwest Ordinance was an American law, not a treaty. Tensions grew. Both sides wanted the same land. Something would have to give. 1794. After years of failed negotiations, both sides met at Fallen Timbers. The result changed everything. 1795. The Treaty of Greenville. Tribal leaders ceded most of Ohio to the United States. With the treaty signed, settlers flooded in. The population exploded. By 1800, Ohio had more than 45,000 people, almost enough for statehood. They wrote their constitution, banned slavery just like the ordinance required. Ohio was ready. March 1st, 1803. Ohio became the 17th state, the first carved from the Northwest Territory. The experiment worked. The system worked. And Ohio had proven it. But Ohio's location made it more than just another state. It sat right on the border between freedom and slavery, and that border was about to matter a lot. Ohio was free soil, but just across the river, Kentucky, Virginia, slavery. For people escaping slavery, that river meant everything. Cross it, and you were one step closer to freedom. But crossing wasn't enough. Slave catchers could legally chase people into free states. Ohio was safer, but not safe. So Ohioans built something remarkable, a secret network, the Underground Railroad. It wasn't a real railroad, it was people. Ordinary people who decided that some laws were worth breaking. They used railroad words as code. Safe houses were stations. Guides were conductors. And the people seeking freedom? Passengers. John Rankin was one of them, a minister in Ripley, Ohio. His house sat on a hill overlooking the river. Every night he lit a lantern in his window, a signal visible from across the water. This way. Freedom is this way. Over 2,000 people found safety through his home. One light, 2,000 lives. The network spread across Ohio. Multiple routes, hundreds of stations, thousands of conductors. Oberlin, Ohio became famous for it. The whole town was a station. Teachers, students, shopkeepers. Everyone helped. Oberlin College was the first in America to admit black students and women. Education and freedom together. And in Cincinnati, a woman named Harriet Beecher Stowe watched escaped families arrive. Their stories haunted her. She wrote a book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It became the best-selling novel of the century. For the first time, millions of Northerners read about the reality of slavery. Ohio stories changed minds. The South was furious. They banned the book. But it was too late. The conversation had started. 1850. Congress made things worse. The Fugitive Slave Act. Now Northerners had to help catch escaped people. By law, many Ohioans refused. They broke the law openly. Some went to jail. They didn't care. The Oberlin-Wellington Rescue, 1858. A whole town helped free a captured man. Right in front of federal officers, 37 people were arrested. They became heroes. Ohio was choosing sides. Estimates say 40,000 people escaped through Ohio. 40,000 journeys to freedom, each one a person who risked everything. Each one helped by ordinary Ohioans who risked everything too. By 1860, the country was tearing apart. North and South, free and slave. Something had to break, and when it did, Ohio would be ready. Because Ohio had been fighting for freedom all along. April 1861. Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun, and Ohio answered the call faster than any other state. Within 2 weeks, 30,000 men had volunteered. By the end of the war, over 300,000 Ohioans would serve, the third highest of any state. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers. They left everything behind. Ohio sent more than soldiers. Ohio sent leaders. Ulysses S. Grant, born in Point Pleasant, Ohio. He had failed at almost everything: farming, business, real estate. When the war started, he was working in his father's leather shop. Nobody expected much from him. They were wrong. William Tecumseh Sherman, from Lancaster, Ohio. Grant's closest friend and most trusted general. Together, these two Ohio boys would change the course of the war in American history. Ohio gave the Union 6 major generals, more than any other state. Grant, Sherman, Sheridan, McPherson, Custer, and more. But leadership wasn't just on the battlefield. Back home, Ohio kept the Union running. Ohio factories produced weapons, uniforms, and supplies. Ohio farms fed the Union Army. Ohio railroads moved everything where it needed to go. The state became an arsenal of democracy, decades before that phrase existed. Not everyone in Ohio supported the war. Some wanted peace at any cost. They were called Copperheads. Ohio was divided, just like the nation. Families argued. Neighbors stopped speaking. War does that. 1863. Morgan's Raid. Confederate cavalry crossed into Ohio, the only time enemy forces reached the state. For 3 weeks, Ohioans saw war up close. Then it was over. The raiders were captured near the Pennsylvania border. The war ended in April 1865. The Union had won. Slavery was abolished. But Ohio had paid a heavy price. 35,000 Ohioans never came home. 35,000 empty chairs at dinner tables across the state. After the war, Ohio's influence only grew. Between 1869 and 1923, 7 of 12 presidents came from Ohio. 7. People started calling it the mother of presidents. Ohio had helped save the Union. Now Ohioans would lead it. The Civil War transformed Ohio, from a frontier state to a national power, from the edge of America to its very heart. And Ohio was just getting started. After the war, America transformed. Railroads connected everything. Factories sprouted everywhere. And Ohio was perfectly positioned, right in the middle of it all. Cleveland exploded. In 1860, it was a small city. By 1900, it was one of the largest in America. And one man was responsible for much of that growth. John D. Rockefeller. He started Standard Oil in Cleveland in 1870. Within 20 years, he controlled 90% of American oil. He became the richest person in modern history. Akron became the rubber capital of the world. Goodyear, Firestone, Goodrich, all based in one Ohio city. When automobiles arrived, Akron made the tires. Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley forged steel. Cincinnati built machine tools and soap. Toledo made glass. Every Ohio city had its specialty. All these factories needed workers. Millions came from Europe. Poles, Hungarians, Italians, Czechs. They filled Ohio's cities with new languages, new foods, new traditions. The work was hard. 12-hour days, 6 days a week. Dangerous machines. Low pay. Factories made Ohio rich, but the workers who ran them struggled. Workers organized. Ohio became a center of the labor movement. Unions formed. Strikes happened. Slowly, conditions began to improve. Cincinnati was called the Queen of the West. Cleveland became the 6th largest city in America. Ohio wasn't flyover country. Ohio was the future. But Ohio wasn't just building factories. It was building something else. Dreams. And 2 brothers in Dayton had the biggest dream of all. Wilbur and Orville Wright ran a bicycle shop in Dayton. They watched birds. They read everything about flight. And they built gliders in their spare time. Everyone thought they were crazy. December 17th, 1903. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. 12 seconds. 852 feet. The first powered flight in human history. 2 guys from Dayton, Ohio changed everything. Ohio kept inventing. Charles Kettering from Loudonville created the electric starter for cars. No more hand cranking. Thomas Edison, born in Milan, Ohio. The light bulb, the phonograph. Ohio ideas. 1914. World War I began in Europe. By 1917, America joined. Ohio's factories shifted to war production. The same plants that made tires now made gas masks. Then came the 20s. Jazz. Prosperity. Ohio cities boomed. New buildings rose. People had money to spend. It felt like the good times would last forever. They didn't. 1929. The stock market crashed. The Great Depression hit Ohio hard. Factories closed. Banks failed. Families lost everything. Then 1941. Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. And once again, Ohio answered. Factories reopened. This time building planes, tanks, and ships. Women filled the factory floors while men served overseas. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She was real. She was from Ohio. She helped win the war, 1945. The war ended. Ohio had produced more military equipment than most entire countries. And somewhere in Wapakoneta, a 5-year-old boy was dreaming about the sky. From bicycles to bombers. From a 12-second flight to factories that built the planes that won the war. Ohio didn't just dream about the future. Ohio built it. After the war, America boomed. And Ohio boomed with it. Soldiers came home, started families, bought houses. The suburbs exploded. Levittown had nothing on Ohio. The highway system connected everything. You could drive from Cleveland to Cincinnati in a few hours. Ohio became a crossroads again, this time on rubber tires. Ohio factories hummed, steel from Youngstown, rubber from Akron, cars from Toledo, glass, chemicals, machinery. If America needed it, Ohio made it. 1969, July 20th. 600 million people watched their televisions, and an Ohio boy took the first step on the moon. Neil Armstrong, Wapakoneta, Ohio. First human to walk in another world. Ohio had gone from building bicycles to reaching the stars in 66 years. But that same year, something else happened. The Cuyahoga River caught fire. A river. On fire. The water was so polluted it burned. The Cuyahoga fire made national news. It embarrassed Ohio. But it also changed America. The Environmental Protection Agency was created. The Clean Water Act passed. Sometimes shame leads to progress. But the factories were getting old. Competition from overseas was growing. Japan made cars cheaper. Korea made steel cheaper. Ohio's advantages were slipping away. 1977. Black Monday. Youngstown Sheet and Tube announced it was closing. 5,000 jobs gone in one day. The steel industry was dying. It was just the beginning. More closures followed. Akron's rubber plants. Cleveland's factories. Toledo's glassworks. The boom was over. The bust had begun. They called it the Rust Belt. The industrial heartland was bleeding jobs, and Ohio was bleeding faster than most. Cleveland hit rock bottom, 1978. The city defaulted on its loans. First major American city to do so since the Great Depression. They called it the mistake on the lake. Young people left. Why stay where there were no jobs? They went to Texas, to California, to anywhere but Ohio. The brain drain was real. Youngstown lost half its population. Half. Entire neighborhoods emptied. Houses stood vacant. Streets went quiet. The factories that remained cut wages, cut benefits. Workers who once earned middle-class salaries now struggled to get by. Then came another crisis. Prescription painkillers flooded Ohio in the 2000s. Addiction spread. Communities that had already lost so much lost even more. 2008. The financial crisis. The housing market collapsed. Ohio had one of the highest foreclosure rates in the country. Rock bottom felt like it had no floor. People wrote Ohio off. Flyover country, they said. A place people came from, not a place people went to. But Ohioans don't quit that easy. In Cleveland, the Cuyahoga River, the one that caught fire, was coming back to life. Fish returned. People kayaked. The shame of '69 became a symbol of recovery. Columbus kept growing. One of the few Ohio cities that never stopped. State government, Ohio State University. A new economy was taking shape, slowly, painfully, but real. The 2010s brought something new. Tech companies discovered Ohio. Cheap land. Good universities. Workers who knew how to build things. Columbus became a tech hub, startups, data centers, healthcare innovation. The city grew while others shrank. By 2020, it passed Cleveland as Ohio's largest city. Cleveland reinvented itself too. The Cleveland Clinic became world famous. Healthcare replaced steel. The city that defaulted in '78 was building a new identity. 2022, the biggest announcement in decades. Intel chose Ohio for a $20 billion chip factory. $20 billion. The largest private investment in state history. Thousands of jobs, a new industry. Ohio wasn't just making tires and steel anymore. It was making the chips that power everything, from phones to cars to satellites. Young people started coming back, or never leaving. Ohio cities ranked among the most affordable in America. You could actually buy a house here. Imagine that. Ohio still has problems. Every state does. The opioid crisis isn't over. Small towns still struggle, but the direction has changed. Ohio is building again. And every 4 years, the whole country remembers Ohio exists. No Republican has ever won the presidency without winning Ohio. As Ohio goes, so goes the nation. They've been saying that for over a century, from ancient mounds to microchips, from underground railroads to the surface of the moon. Ohio was never flyover country. It was always the heart of it all, and it still is.